Welcome to Toastmaster Time, the show that's got everybody talking. My name is James Jeffley, and I will be your host for this edition of Toastmaster Time. We hope you're prepared to be entertained and to learn, because tonight's show is about how to prepare and deliver a memorable message. We're featuring several experienced Toastmasters from District 57, and let's get more details from my co-host, Trich Gray. Trish, tell us what we're in store for.
Yes, James. When you know you're going to be giving a presentation, have you ever found yourself staring at a blank sheet of paper, trying to decide, what am I going to say? There's nothing more frustrating. Our first speaker is going to give us some ideas on how to avoid that blank sheet of paper syndrome. Once you prepare the speech, now you have to deliver it to your audience. How are you going to ensure that they remember your main point? Our second speaker is going to give us tips on how to deliver your speech to make your message memorable. Our third speaker is then going to take the tips from our first two speakers and put them all together. I know we're going to enjoy this show because these are experienced speakers. However, we're also going to walk away with some great speaking tips. Are you ready for an awesome show, James?
I sure am, Trish. It sounds like we've got a great show planned. Let's get started. It's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, George Marshall. George, welcome.
Thank you, James.
What club are you representing, George?
Star Search in Fremont.
Outstanding. You're talking about preparing a speech. Why did you choose this topic?
Because when I visited the clubs nearby in my area, I asked the members, what are you having the most trouble with? And invariably, they had a hard time writing the speech. Even if they had an idea, they didn't know how to go about it.
Yeah, that can be a big stumbling block. Are you prepared to give your speech?
Yes.
Great. I'll give you a moment to take your spot. In the meantime, I'll share some tips of mine with the audience about preparing a speech. I generally start with three things. One, the takeaway message. What's the thing I want my audience to remember? Two, the takeaway action. What would I like my audience to do? And finally, the takeaway benefit. What about my message is helpful to the audience? I see our speaker is ready, so I'd like to introduce our first speaker, George Marshall, the easy way to write a speech. The easy way to write a speech, George Marshall.
Has this ever happened to you? You're giving a talk, you think it's going great. And you look around at the audience, and you see some of the audience members look puzzled. And some of the other ones seem bored. Oh no. Not what you had in mind. Or how about this? You listened to someone else give a speech and it was an interesting speech, you liked it. But an hour later, you can't remember what they were talking about. Oh, this is not the way we want things to go, folks. If the audience can't follow your talk, it's up to you to fix it. If they don't get it, we have to fix it. There's two aspects to giving a speech. First is your message, the content, what it is you want to say. The second is how you deliver it, how you actually present that material. Now, delivery is very, very important. But if you don't have a message organized in a way that your audience can follow you, it's just not going to matter how you say those words, is it? So tonight I'm going to give you a couple of tips on how you can better write a speech. This is going to help you better present the speech, to write it, and also it's going to let your audience better understand it. Let's start out. Three things. First idea. Decide what the purpose of the speech is. Now, I don't mean the purpose in general, like entertain or educate or train. No, I mean the specific purpose. What do you want your audience to do, or think, or feel after your talk? Perhaps you want your audience to support a certain charity. Perhaps you want to persuade them to help out a certain political cause. Maybe you want to inform them in such a way that they'll go home and check the batteries in their smoke detector that night. Whatever the purpose is, make it specific and write it down. Okay, now we've got the purpose of our speech. You can start writing the speech. What part shall we write first? Let's write the conclusion. The conclusion, that's the last thing we're going to say. Yes, the reason we're going to write the conclusion first is because, remember, that's the part of the speech where you remind the audience what your key points were, what your reason was for delivering it, what you want them to remember about the talk. Write down that conclusion. In fact, you may decide that having written it, you want to go back and adjust your purpose a little bit. That's okay. Now we got the conclusion. Let's go ahead and write the speech. Leave the opening aside for the moment, and let's write the main points. Let's say you've got 3 points you want to cover in a short speech. For each one of those points, you're going to state what your point is or your message, and then you're going to give backup material. That backup material may be additional description. It may be an example. It may be a story that illustrates your point. Whatever it is, you've got your key point that you stated clearly, and then the backup material that makes it work. And don't forget, as you write each of these points, you want to create a transition from one point to the other so that the audience can follow you. So we've written our purpose, we wrote the conclusion, we created all the main points. Now, finally, let's write the opening. Why did we wait to write the opening to the end? Because we now know the content of the speech entirely, and we know exactly what that opening has to say to introduce the material. So there you have it, a very simple technique. Let's review it. First, come up with a purpose, a specific purpose. What do you want the audience to do, think, or feel about your speech? Once you've done that, you can then write down the key things you want them to remember about having you given it. Once you've done that, then you can actually write the main points and finally wind up with the opening. So what have we done here? Essentially, we've written that speech backwards, haven't we? The benefit of doing that way is, first, it's easier to write. You take small, simple steps where you first figure out what you want to do before you try to write the speech about it. So we write the purpose, then we write the conclusion that matches the purpose, then we write the key points of the speech that are going to lead to that conclusion, and finally, we write the opening where we're going to introduce all this material to our audience. If you use this method, I promise you 2 things. One, you're going to find it a lot easier to construct a speech. 2, you're going to find that your audiences follow you better. They understand your points better because they're so well structured. And guess what? They are going to consider you to be a better speaker. Mr. Toastmaster.
Outstanding. Well done. Thank you very much. Those were excellent tips on how to prepare a speech, George. In addition to preparing a speech, you also have to deliver it in a way that gets your message across to the audience. And here to share some tips on delivery is Ashley Harkness. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
What club are you representing?
Speakers Forum 9338.
And where's that located?
Pleasanton, California.
Pleasanton. You're talking about delivery. Why did you choose this topic?
Well, delivery is the communication between the speaker and the audience. The delivery is how that speaker intends to reach that audience. And there are several ways that they have to use different skills to make it happen.
Well, I'm sure you're going to share a lot of those skills with us in this show.
I intend to.
Are you ready?
Oh, sure.
I'll give you a moment to take your spot, and I'll share a couple of tips with the audience. One of the most memorable things someone ever said to me about giving a speech is, just be yourself. You might see a host of great speakers out there in Toastmasters or in other places around the world, on television, etc., and you might want to copy them, but don't. Learn from them, as you'll learn from speakers here, but ultimately be yourself. I'd like to introduce Ashley Harkness. His speech is Speech Delivery, Visual and Audible Choreography. Visual and Audible Choreography, Ashley Harkness.
One of the most memorable speeches I ever heard involved gestures, voice, and movement. One of the best evaluations that I remembered was when the evaluator said, "Ashley, you need acting lessons." Acting lessons? Well, why not? Because acting is a pre-planned choreography of the things we need to do once we're out there speaking. We definitely need to be able to use gestures, we need to be able to use voice, and we need to be able to use movement. And this becomes a choreography of our speaking abilities. Without it, it doesn't work. When you start to think about gestures, gestures are very common. When we are speaking at the lectern, we're telling a story or we're doing something else, but the fact of the matter is, we are communicating directly with the audience. They expect us to have movements, and sometimes the movements are considered to be natural. For instance, we know lots of people who have big movements, and they're large about what they do, and they're all over the place with their gestures. But there are other people that the gestures are a raised eyebrow, perhaps a grimace. We all understand what these gestures are doing. They have to be purposeful, however, in the context of the speech. For example, there was an international speech contestant who was demonstrating to the audience the jacking up of a car. He was down with the lever going up and down, and screech, 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 screech. Combined with that gesture and the noise that he was making, everybody got the idea. The car was not there, but the idea was. Then, of course, there was another speech contestant who decided that he was going to show us how a machine would be used to validate a parking ticket. And to do this, he went ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. Everybody understood. The gesture was appropriate and obvious. Not all gestures are so obvious, but then again, they don't have to be. Sometimes we just recognize things pretty obviously. For instance, if you see somebody who says, "This is how it should be," and points, or perhaps they're reaching out in a different way, or maybe they're just standing with their hands on their hips. So, we have to couple our gestures with the voice that we are using. It's part of the skill. It's part of the choreography that the speaker has to do. Now, when we start thinking about voice, remember that the voice is important because it conveys in and of itself. Consider this. What if you were listening to a radio program? What if you were listening to the people as they talked? You could tell the hard-bitten detective, or perhaps that fast-testing, speaking wise guy, or maybe the woman who is scared. It's because the choreography for that particular show is all about getting the audience to understand through hearing. Nothing else is there. Consider a mime. All you have is what he shows you. There is no verbal. So the gestures, creating the image in your mind, the audience. And then lastly, there is the stage, the wonderful, huge stage. You're free to move about and take the audience with you as long as you explain to them what you're doing. Supposing you're going to describe the life of a young person from young to old. You can take them from one end to the other and change their age as they do that. Perhaps you wish to place things. There was an international speech contestant who talked about his father and his passing. But he talked about his father in his favorite chair and how he would sit there day after day until one day he saw his father, and he reached over, and his father was gone. The chair was imaginary, but in our minds in the audience, we knew what was happening there. What you put on the stage, you have to be very careful about. Because, let's face it, If you're going to ask people to come with you through a graveyard, you don't want to step on the graves, do you? No, you have to make it obvious you're moving around. Also, if you have placed people, over here is Bill, and over here is John. When you speak with Bill, you have to say, Bill, have you seen John? He's behind me over here. The audience must be told. They must understand. For if you confuse them, you lose them. Very simple. And then, when you think about it, people always have a tendency to bring out props. Props should be hidden unless you're at the right time to use them. And when it's the right time to use them, you bring them out, use them, and then, when you're done, you put them away. The point being is that a prop will distract people if it's used inappropriately. Remember, all of this is about choreography of the visual and the auditory symbols. The audience expects that you will have all of this all set up ahead of time. They will expect that they will be able to follow along and understand that everything that you are doing has a point, a purpose, and a place. And when you think about it, when you talk about the gestures, the vocal, and you also add in the movements, you're talking about a complete choreography. Now, as for acting, well, whatever makes it better for you. Because the whole point is to use all the tools you have in the delivery of your speech.
Outstanding. Thank you very much, Ashley. That was a great speech, and you provided a lot of wonderful tips to our audience. I hope we keep them in mind in our next presentations. Now that we've learned about speech preparation and about the audible and visual choreography, we've got to take all of these parts and put them together to create that memorable message, that memorable speech. And here to put it all together is Justin Lola. Justin, welcome.
How you doing, James?
I'm well, thank you. What club are you representing?
I'm with the Toastmasters Leadership Club in Oakland.
How long have you been a member there?
I've been there for 3 years.
Great. So your speech is about putting it all together. How did you come up with this speech?
Well, my dad passed away about 10 months ago, and it's been extremely hard for me to deal with. So now I'm finally able to tell his story, put things together, and throw a little laughter at it.
Well, I honor you for your courage and sharing your personal story with us. Are you ready to give your speech?
Absolutely.
I'll give you a moment to take your spot. While Justin prepares, I think one of the most important things we could ever do is simply connect. Connect with the audience in a real way. Don't be afraid to share your story, because whatever is in your story is also part of the story of someone in that audience, and that helps allow them to connect with you and your message and make it more memorable. Please welcome Justin Lola, A Walk in the Park. A Walk in the Park, Justin Lola.
I received a frantic call at work. For us IT professionals, it's no big deal. We get these calls all the time. However, it wasn't the, hey, my computer's frozen. Or it wasn't, I've got the blue screen of death. No, it was my mom calling, and she was upset. Why was she upset? Because my dad had decided to go across the street to the park. Now, why would you say that's a big deal? Well, my dad's 88 years old, and his vision is extremely limited, and his hearing is none, unless he wears his hearing aids, which he never decides to do. But on top of that, the street in front of our house is a boulevard where cars are going 50 to 55 miles an hour, and they don't stop for anybody. So yeah, my mom was highly upset. Now, I work on the peninsula, so it's about 30 minutes away. So I quickly got into my car and was hoping that traffic would be behaving. Now, sometimes, as you know, traffic is tough. And I was hoping I wouldn't have to use this invention that I created. This invention that I've created is called the lift and flip. That's right, the lift and flip. So if the car is in front of you is disabled, you lift it up and flip it out of the way, just like you do with pancakes. So fortunately, traffic behaved. I got to my folks' place, parked the car, called my mom up, said, hey, I'm here in town. I'm going to go find Pop, my dad. So I quickly crossed the street, and I was looking for my dad. I saw that he was at a park bench. He had seated himself. There's a backboard there where he played tennis. And he seemed okay. I walked up next to him and sat down and said, hey, Pop, how's it going? But he didn't move. He didn't have his hearing aid on, and he had sunglasses on. So I figured, okay, I'm going to get right in front of him. Hey, Pop, it's me. I startled him. He says, hey, how's it going? I said, good, good. I said, how you doing, Pop? And he started telling me about how he couldn't see the ball, the tennis ball anymore. Those green balls turned black after a while on the black top. I said, yeah, Pop, I'll go ahead and get you some new ones. Now he started reminiscing about all the tennis tournaments that we put on over the years. There's about 15 years we put tennis tournaments on, and the whole family was involved. Of course, the kids were selling food and drink while my dad was doing all the work. So we had a whole lot of fun. Of course, it was in a park. Okay, the sun was now setting, so we had to leave. I told Pop, hey, we have to go. He said, okay. So we got up, and we started walking towards the house. And we were walking slowly. And he stopped for a second, turned to me, and he said, getting old is tough. And at that moment, a flash came over me. And I remember that he came to the United States many years ago with just the clothes on his back. He became a doctor. He was certified here in the US and became a very successful doctor and raised a very large family. We got to the boulevard. And I was very nervous at this point because he was about to cross. Now he looked left, he looked right, and then he dashed across. And I was like, that's my dad? He got to the middle divider and again looked left, looked right, and dashed across. Now I was there to help him in case he needed it, but obviously he didn't need help. He walked to the house. I was right behind him. He opened the door. He waved at me, and then he closed the door. Yes, he closed the door on me. I waited for a minute. I knocked again, and my mom answered the door. My dad was obviously okay. Soon after that, my dad passed away. I was never able to give him his new tennis balls. There are 3 things that I learned from my dad. First, keep it simple. KISS. Just like my lift and flip idea. I use that in IT all the time. Keep it simple. Second, his family is very important. Just like in the tennis tournaments where he had all of us helping. I'm a coach for my son and daughter, and we have a ton of time together. And third is humor. Life is too serious sometimes. You've got to be able to laugh. You have to be able to joke with each other. You receive frantic phone calls sometimes. You have to know which ones are urgent. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Justin. Thank you for sharing your speech and your tips with us. Trish, we heard some great speakers tonight sharing some outstanding tips about how to prepare a speech, how to deliver a speech, and finally, how to put it all together. What are your thoughts?
What I really liked about, especially Justin's speech, because my dad's 88, so I can relate, can't see well, can't hear well, is that by the word choice and even the story that he chose to tell, it drew me in because, you know, life is a journey, and it starts wherever you are, and you just take what you're given. You know, his dad came to the U.S. with the clothes on his back. You know, I could just picture, you know, his father doing that, and it just helped draw me in emotionally. You know, some speeches, a lot more delivery techniques. You saw Ashley, a lot of, you know, you can tell he uses his voice, he knows how to use the stage. You know, it's whatever works best to get your message across to your audience.
Exactly. And one of the things I really appreciated is that he told a story. Sometimes speakers think, well, I'll dazzle them with facts and memorable quotes, and that can be really effective. But for me, some of the best speeches have been when a person just stood up and told their story. And that allowed me to connect with them with the rest of the audience, and have a much bigger impact.
I can remember one speaker talking about how he would throw all these, you know, quotes from famous people into his speech. And I thought this was a very good point, is, you know, a quote is fine, but if I wanted to hear from, you know, Eleanor Roosevelt, who's one of my people that I look up to, you know, whatever, you know, that speaker there. But you have to give how it affects you, why that particular quote was important to you, what you got out of that message. So it has to be what's important to you, but then how do you generalize it to your audience? Because, you know, they're listening to you for a reason, not just to hear you speak. You have to draw them in and give them a reason for listening to you. And I love your idea about stories, because without a good story, people just aren't going to be that interested.
Exactly. Well, that's our show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us at Toastmaster Time. We tape our show here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and if you'd like to learn more about our show, you can visit us on the web at toastmastertime.com. We're sponsored by Toastmasters District 57, and to learn more about D57, go to d57tm.org. If you'd like to learn more about Toastmasters International, visit us on the web at toastmasters.org. It's also a great place to find a club in your area. We appreciate all of the wonderful staff and volunteers here at the Media Center in Palo Alto, California. Again, thanks to our guest speakers, Justin Lola, Ashley Harkness, and George Marshall, and to my co-host, Trich Gray. From all of us at Toastmaster Time, we invite you to join Toastmasters and keep talking.